And right there, mixed in with ordinary quarters, sat a 2001 New York State quarter that looked exactly like the rest. No shine, no gold glow, no obvious sign it was special. And that's what makes this story so dangerous, because the most valuable coins never scream. They whisper. When the New York State quarter was released in 2001, it was supposed to be a celebration. The first coin of the state quarters program. A bold start. George Washington on the front, the Statue of Liberty on the back, an eagle in flight, 11 stars for the original colonies. Millions were minted. People spent them without a second thought. Arcade machines swallowed them. Parking meters ate them alive. And collectors? Most shrugged and said, common coin. Deep inside the minting process, a small number of these quarters didn't come out the way they were supposed to. Pressure mismatches, die errors, planchet mistakes, alignment problems that only a trained eye, or a very lucky one, would ever notice. These errors slipped through quality control, entered circulation, and disappeared into pockets across America. And that's when the legends began. Collectors were shocked when the first whispers surfaced. A New York quarter that looked wrong. Not damaged. Not worn. Wrong. The kind of wrong that makes professionals stop talking mid-sentence. The kind of wrong that makes auction rooms go silent. One collector reportedly pulled a 2001 New York quarter from everyday change and noticed something unsettling. The strike was off. The design didn't sit where it should. Parts of the coin looked doubled, almost ghost-like, as if the metal had tried to tell two stories at once. Most people would have tossed it aside. Instead, he froze. Because this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Under magnification, the coin revealed a dramatic mint error so rare that experts debated it for weeks. A combination of striking anomalies that shouldn't exist together on a modern U.S. quarter. The kind of error that turns a face-value coin into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The kind that doesn't just make headlines, it rewrites price guides. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on coins like this. Not because every New York quarter is valuable, far from it, but because the right one can change a life. When rumors of private sales began circulating, the numbers sounded unreal. 6 figures, then more. Then the word everyone dreams of hearing, $1 million. Most of these coins were never pulled aside. They're still out there, in old jars, in forgotten drawers, in glove compartments that haven't been opened in years, sitting quietly, waiting. But what happened next stunned even seasoned professionals. Another example surfaced. Different owner. Same year. Same design. Another shocking error hiding in plain sight. This time, the planchet, the metal disc itself, was wrong. Either struck on the wrong alloy or improperly prepared, giving the coin a weight and texture that didn't match any official records. It passed through machines, through hands, through decades. Untouched, collectors were stunned. Appraisers argued. Authentication teams triple-checked their instruments. And when the final opinion came back, the room changed. Because coins like this don't follow normal rules. They don't need to be old. They don't need to be gold. They just need to be wrong in exactly the right way. And when that happens, value explodes. Not hundreds, not thousands. We're talking life-altering money. $1 million money. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn, and where you need to pay attention. Most people think they know what to look for. They check the date. They glance at the mint mark. They shrug and move on. That's how treasures get lost. The most valuable 2001 New York quarters don't announce themselves. They hide in details most eyes glide right over, and weight matters more than people realize. A coin that feels just slightly wrong in the hand can be the difference between spare change and a story worth telling for the rest of your life. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world all over again. That a rumor began circulating, quietly, at first. That one exceptional 2001 New York quarter, preserved in near-perfect condition with a dramatic mint error, was valued privately at close to $1 million. Not because of hype, not because of social media, but because the error was so rare it might never appear again. That's how this market works. When supply drops to nearly zero and demand goes through the roof, logic steps aside. Desire takes over. And collectors with deep pockets don't hesitate. This is why you never rush through your change. This is why dealers say the most dangerous coins are the ones people assume are ordinary. Because somewhere out there, right now, a 2001 New York State quarter is sitting unnoticed, carrying a mistake powerful enough to rewrite someone's future. No fanfare, no spotlight, just quiet potential. And the final truth is almost painful to accept. Most people will never know what they spent. They'll never know what they dropped into a vending machine. They'll never know what they handed to a cashier. And they'll never know they were holding something that collectors would fight over, something that whispers the words $1 million to S.O. tonight. When you open that drawer, when you shake that jar, when loose change spills across the table, slow down. Look again, because history doesn't always look rare. Picture an ordinary day in 2007. Gas prices on the rise, receipts stuffed into pockets, loose change rattling in cup holders. And right there, mixed in with nickels and pennies, a Utah State quarter quietly slipped into circulation from the Denver Mint. No fanfare, no warning, no idea that it was about to become one of the most talked about modern coins in America. Millions were struck, identical at a glance. Another state quarter in a long line of them. But sometimes history hides in plain sight, and sometimes the smallest detail rewrites everything. Because buried inside the 2007 Utah quarter run were mistakes so subtle, so shocking, that seasoned dealers would later stare at them in silence. Coins that should never have left the mint. Coins that broke the rules. And when the first one surfaced, nobody believed it. The story goes that it came from a grocery store register. A man paid for coffee. The cashier scooped change. The quarter felt different. Not heavier, just wrong. He almost spent it again. Almost. Under magnification, the surfaces told a story no one was prepared for. Doubling where doubling should not exist. Dime markers completely out of place. Metal flow that suggested extreme pressure errors. And most jaw-dropping of all, signs that the coin may have been struck on the wrong planchet or with a severely misaligned die, creating details never intended to be seen. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were skeptical. Then the bidding started. Word spread fast, the way it always does when money is involved. Forums lit up. Phone calls were made. Photos were leaked. And suddenly, the 2007 Utah quarter was no longer just pocket change. It was a legend, because another example surfaced. And then another. Each one different. Each one stranger than the last. Some showed dramatic doubling on the year and lettering. Others revealed ghost-like outlines beneath the design, as if two coins were fighting for space on one surface. And one coin, just one, was so extreme that experts argued over it for months. This shouldn't exist, one specialist reportedly said. And when it finally crossed into a private transaction, insiders whispered a number that made jaws drop. A number that sounded impossible for a modern quarter. A number brushing the edge of $1 million. The answer is fear, rarity, and disbelief. Fear, because mint errors like this expose flaws in a system built on precision. Rarity, because no one knows how many escaped, maybe 10, maybe fewer. And disbelief, because Americans are trained to think treasure belongs in the past, not in their pockets. Auction houses began quietly asking questions. Dealers started paying premiums for any 2007 Utah quarter that looked even slightly unusual. Coin rolls were cracked open. Drawers were dumped onto tables. People who had ignored state quarters for years suddenly saw them differently. One man reportedly searched through over 30,000 quarters before finding something that made his hands shake. Another collector swore his example paid off his mortgage. True or not, the frenzy was real. And here's the part most people miss. The Utah quarter design itself is a trap. The mountains, the lines, the dates, the textures hide errors beautifully. Doubling can disappear unless the light hits it just right. Die cracks can masquerade as design elements, and off-metal strikes can be dismissed as damage by the untrained eye. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Collectors now know to look for extreme doubling on In God We Trust. Distortion in the year 2007. Weakness in one area paired with sharpness in another, and abnormal color or weight. A genuine mint error won't look abused. It will look wrong in a way that feels intentional, but isn't. And the mint mark matters. The D is everything to NO. Mint mark versions don't carry the same whispers. Philadelphia coins don't spark the same fear. It's the Denver strikes, rushed, high volume, and imperfect, that fuel the legend. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins, not because every one is valuable, but because one might be. And that's all it takes. Point one coin, point one miracle, point one moment where pocket change turns into destiny. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world one last time. A longtime collector admitted he had spent one of these quarters years earlier, never realizing what it was. He said it still haunts him. Not because of the money, but because treasure was in his hand, and he let it go. That's the real power of this story. Not auctions, not rumors, but the idea that life-changing value doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers to SO before you dismiss that Utah quarter as ordinary. Look again. Check the year. Check the mint mark. Tilt it in the light. Weigh it. Question it. Because history has a habit of hiding where nobody thinks to look. And somewhere out there, in a jar, a drawer, or a pocket, a forgotten coin waits for the moment someone finally sees it for what it is. It looks ordinary. Dull silver. Familiar weight. A Washington quarter you've held 1,000 times without a second thought. In 1995, millions of these quarters poured out of the Denver Mint, jingling into pockets, cash registers, and coffee jars across America. Nothing special, nothing rare, or so everyone believed. But years later, something surfaced that sent a chill through the coin world. Point one collector. Just an everyday guy sorting loose change at his kitchen table. Noticed something that made him stop breathing for a second. The coin felt right, but looked wrong. The date read 1995. The mint mark showed a small D. Yet something about Washington's face didn't match anything he'd ever seen before, but he almost put it back. Almost. And that decision may have changed his life. Because hidden among normal 1995 D Washington quarters is a rumored minting anomaly so extreme, so shocking, that when examples surfaced, veteran dealers reportedly went silent. Not because it was flashy, not because it was shiny, but because it shouldn't exist at all. And when word leaked out, collectors were stunned. The story goes that during a short window at the Denver Mint, a small batch of quarters may have been struck using the wrong die. Possibly a transitional or experimental die never meant for circulation. The strike pressure was off. The alignment was wrong. And microscopic details that should never appear together showed up on the same coin. Most people would never notice, but specialists did. Under magnification, the coin revealed doubling so sharp it looked like the metal itself was trembling. Washington's profile showed extra thickness along the jawline. The letters in Liberty appeared swollen, almost melted, yet razor-sharp. Even the eagle on the reverse carried strange, ghost-like outlines where no outlines should exist. This wasn't damage. This was a mistake born inside the mint. And that's when the rumors started spreading like wildfire. Dealers began quietly asking a single question at coin shows. Have you seen the 1995 D yet? Phones rang late at night. Photos were shared in private groups. And suddenly, a quarter most people ignore became one of the most talked about modern U.S. coins in existence. Some say a specimen was privately sold. Others claim an auction house refused to list one because the bidding would explode. And a few insiders whisper that if a flawless example ever hit the open market, the price would shatter expectations, possibly climbing past $1 million. But here's the part that makes this story almost unbearable. These coins were never pulled from circulation. They were spent. They were dropped into vending machines, left in tip jars, forgotten in glove compartments, which means some of them could still be out there. Right now, as the years passed, more stories emerged. A retiree in the Midwest who found one in a roll from the bank. A mechanic who noticed strange lettering while cleaning grease off his hands. A woman who kept a weird-looking quarter in her jewelry box for decades without knowing why she couldn't bring herself to spend it. Every time one surfaced, the same pattern followed. Authentication attempts, heated debates, offers made quietly, then pulled back. Because the coin wasn't just rare, it challenged what experts thought they knew about mid-1990s minting practices. And that's why this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. This isn't about scratches or wear. It's not about silver content. It's about a perfect storm of errors happening at exactly the wrong moment. Die doubling, misaligned hubs, strike anomalies so precise they could only occur inside the minting process itself. Collectors weren't just shocked. They were hungry, because modern coins aren't supposed to do this. They're supposed to be predictable, controlled, boring. And yet this quarter broke all the rules. Next, forget the naked eye. This coin hides its secrets in tiny places. Look closely at Washington's profile. The doubling, if present, will look raised, not flat. Mechanical doubling doesn't count. True doubling looks like a shadow made of solid metal. Then study the letters. Especially "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." On the rare version, parts of the lettering appear thick, slightly distorted, yet incredibly sharp at the edges. Blurry letters mean damage. Sharp, doubled edges mean possibility. Flip the coin dot on the reverse. Focus on the eagle. Check the wings, the tips, the tail feathers. Extra lines or outlines that match the design, not random scratches, are critical. Most people never look there. That's why they miss it. And one more thing most people get wrong. Cleaning the coin destroys value. Even gently. Even once. A coin like this must remain exactly as found. Natural wear is acceptable. Artificial shine is a death sentence. Because if you do have one of these, you don't own a quarter, you own a story. A mystery. A once-in-a-lifetime accident that slipped through one of the most advanced mints in the world. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. In 2008, as America faced uncertainty and recession, millions of Arizona state quarters quietly poured out of the U.S. Mint. They jingled in cup holders, disappeared into couch cushions, and paid for gas station coffee. Nobody stopped to look. Nobody imagined that one version of this ordinary quarter would one day be spoken about in the same breath as million-dollar rarities. But that's exactly what happened, because hidden among those everyday coins was a mistake so subtle, so unexpected, that it slipped past inspectors, dealers, and collectors alike. For years, it went unnoticed, until one sharp-eyed collector felt something was wrong. And what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The Arizona State Quarter was meant to honor the Grand Canyon State. The blazing sun, the iconic saguaro cactus, and the banner reading Grand Canyon State. It looked simple, clean, harmless. But beneath that calm design, a silent error was waiting to explode into legend. Collectors were shocked when reports began circulating of a 2008 Arizona quarter with a dramatic die error. A mistake so extreme, it looked almost unreal. Parts of the design appeared distorted. Extra metal seemed to bleed where it didn't belong. In some examples, details were warped as if the coin had been pulled apart and smashed back together. At first, people laughed it off. Just damage, they said. Just another ruined coin. But then professionals took a closer look, and everything changed. Under magnification, experts saw something chillingly rare. A major die break and retained cud. A catastrophic minting failure that should never have left the mint. Even more astonishing, some pieces showed signs of a double strike or severe die deterioration, creating raised, ghost-like shapes that weren't part of the original design. This wasn't damage after the fact. This was born this way. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin once they realized what they were seeing. Because in the world of error coins, severity is everything. The more dramatic the mistake, the more valuable the coin. And this error wasn't subtle. It was loud, violent, and unforgettable. But what truly pushed this Arizona quarter into million-dollar territory was what happened next. One example, pulled from circulation, was authenticated and encapsulated. When it appeared at a private sale, whispers spread fast. Bidding didn't just climb, it exploded. Collectors who had spent decades chasing once-in-a-lifetime coins suddenly found themselves staring at a modern quarter commanding prices usually reserved for legendary gold pieces. The final number shocked everyone. This wasn't pocket change anymore. This was history. Some estimates now claim that if a flawless, extreme error 2008 Arizona quarter with the right characteristics ever reached a major auction again, it could approach or exceed $1 million, especially if it's a one-of-a-kind or tied to a documented mint anomaly. $1 million. From a coin most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. But here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night. Most of these coins were never identified. They were spent, lost, thrown away. And that's why this story refuses to die. Because unlike ancient coins locked in museums, the 2008 Arizona quarter lived in the wild. It passed through cash registers. It rode in pockets. It sat in jars on kitchen counters across America. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And he didn't even know what he had at first that he noticed the weight felt strange. The edge looked wrong. The design seemed swollen, almost melted. Instead of ignoring it, he paused. That pause changed his life. When professional graders examined the coin, they confirmed it wasn't just rare, It was extraordinary. The kind of error that happens once in tens of millions of strikes. The kind of mistake that causes emergency shutdowns at the mint when discovered. And yet, this one slipped through. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were silent. Then the phone call started, because everyone knew the same terrifying truth that if one exists, there could be another. And maybe it hasn't been found yet. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The key isn't just that it's a 2008 Arizona quarter. It's the error itself. Massive raised blobs of metal along the rim. Design elements that look duplicated, stretched, or crushed. A cactus that appears distorted. Lettering that seems to sink or bulge unnaturally. An edge that doesn't look clean or uniform. And most importantly, it must be a genuine mint error, not post-mint damaged. That's where people make costly mistakes. Scratches, hammer marks, heat damage. These destroy value. But true mint errors have smooth metal flow, natural contours, and continuity that only happen during the striking process. This is why professionals insist on authentication. Because when the error is real, the value can be unreal. $1 million unreal. Collectors are still hunting. They search rolls from banks. They dig through old jars. They recheck coins they dismissed years ago. Because the Arizona quarter didn't come with a warning label. It didn't announce itself. It hid. And that's what makes this story so powerful. This isn't about wealth handed down through generations. This is about awareness. About curiosity. About taking a second look when everyone else walks away. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Rumors began circulating of additional undiscovered examples. Nothing confirmed. Nothing proven. Just enough whispers to keep the hunt alive. And as long as the hunt lives, hope lives with it. Because somewhere out there, a 2008 Arizona state quarter with a catastrophic mint error could still be sitting unnoticed, in a drawer, a cup holder, or a forgotten jar of change. So here's what to look for. Check the year, 2008. Check the design, Arizona with the saguaro cactus and rising sun. Examine the rim, raised metal, breaks, blobs, or swelling. Study the details, doubling, distortion, or elements that don't look right. Feel the weight. Anything unusually heavy or uneven matters, and never clean it. Cleaning a coin like this can destroy hundreds of thousands of dollars in value in seconds. Have it authenticated. Because if you find the right one, you're not just holding a quarter, that you're holding a once-in-a-lifetime mistake, that a silent survivor of the U.S. Mint, a forgotten miracle hiding in plain sight. A plain-looking quarter. Dull silver. George Washington on the front. South Carolina on the back. The kind of coin you wouldn't even bother picking up off the sidewalk. And yet, this exact coin has become one of the most whispered about modern treasures in American coin collecting, because the 2000 South Carolina state quarter is hiding a secret that turned ordinary pocket change into a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. It all started quietly. No headlines. No viral videos. Just a collector in the early 2000s who noticed something felt wrong. Or maybe right. A tiny detail that didn't match what it should have been. At first, even dealers brushed it off. It's just another state quarter. They said. Millions were made. Billions circulated. Nothing special. But that collector didn't listen. He sent it in anyway. And when the results came back, the room went silent. Because this quarter wasn't ordinary. It wasn't supposed to exist. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. The year 2000 marked the early days of the state quarters program. America was obsessed. People were hoarding rolls, filling albums, digging through change jars. The U.S. Mint was striking quarters at an unbelievable pace, pushing machines to their limits. And when speed replaces perfection, mistakes happen. Deep inside the Philadelphia Mint, something went wrong. A wrong planchet, a misaligned die, a pressure error so rare that most mint employees never see one in their entire career. The result? A small batch of South Carolina quarters that defied the rules of modern minting. Collectors later discovered examples with dramatic off-metal strikes, missing layers, extreme die clashes, and jaw-dropping double strikes that made the design look warped. Almost melted, because one 2000 South Carolina quarter was discovered struck on a wrong experimental planchet, never intended for circulation. Not a test token. Not a pattern officially released. A mistake that slipped into the wild. And that mistake turned into $1 million talk almost overnight. When photos leaked into collector circles, forums exploded, dealers argued, Grading services debated authenticity. Skeptics called it impossible. Then it was authenticated, and suddenly, the coin no one cared about became the coin everyone wanted. But the story doesn't end there, because the most shocking part is how it was found. Not in a vault, not in an old estate collection, not inherited. It was found in circulation, loose change. A handful of coins dumped onto a kitchen table after a grocery run. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling. Phone lines lit up. Because if one existed, others might too. And here's where the suspense deepens. Most people have no idea what they're looking for. They see a quarter and move on. But hidden in plain sight are details so subtle, so easy to miss, that even seasoned collectors have overlooked them for years. And this tiny detail is why it's worth millions. And most people miss it. Look at the mint mark first. It must have a clear P. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint. No P. Walk away. But the mint mark alone isn't enough. Next, examine the weight. This is where things get serious. A standard clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. But the rare error examples don't. Some weigh significantly more, some significantly less. That difference is the fingerprint of a wrong planchet. A mistake that should never leave the mint. Now tilt the coin under light. Some of the most valuable examples show incomplete clad layers or exposed cores that shimmer differently than standard copper. Nickel. Collectors who know freeze when they see this. One example, graded in near-perfect condition despite the error, crossed the auction block quietly. No flashy promotion. Just a listing buried among hundreds of others. Bidding started low, then jumped, then exploded. In minutes, it crossed six figures. Then 7. By the time the hammer fell, the final number had people rubbing their eyes in disbelief. Not because it was old, not because it was gold, but because it proved something terrifying and thrilling at the same time. Modern change can still make someone rich. And now dealers are rushing to get their hands on any 2000 P South Carolina quarter that looks even slightly off. Because here's the truth no one tells casual collectors. The rarest coins don't always look dramatic at first glance. Sometimes the difference between face value and $1 million is a fraction of a gram. A barely visible shift in metal. A detail most people never check. And the South Carolina quarter is especially dangerous because millions of people save them without ever inspecting them closely. Drawers, coffee cans, old albums forgotten in closets. If they're still out there. Here's how to protect yourself from missing the find of a lifetime. Not clean the coin. Ever. Cleaning can destroy most of the value instantly. Use a scale. A cheap digital scale can change your life. If the weight is off, stop everything. Inspect the edges. Look for odd coloring, missing layers, or thickness that doesn't match a normal quarter. Look closely at the strike. Blurred details, doubling, or warped designs aren't damage. They're clues. And most importantly, if something feels wrong or right, trust that instinct. Because every legendary discovery started with someone saying, "This looks strange." The South Carolina quarter was supposed to represent history. What it accidentally created was opportunity. A reminder that treasure doesn't always glitter. Sometimes it jingles in your pocket. And somewhere right now, someone is unknowingly spending a coin that collectors would fight over, a coin that could rewrite their future. Imagine reaching into your pocket, feeling loose change, completely unaware that one ordinary-looking quarter could change your life forever. In 2002, millions of Mississippi state quarters were released into circulation. People spent them on coffee, parking meters, and vending machines. No one stopped to stare. No one imagined destiny was hiding in plain sight. But deep inside that release, something went terribly and wonderfully wrong. Collectors would later say this was the moment the coin world blinked and missed it first glance. The 2002 P Mississippi State quarter looks harmless. George Washington on the front, the magnolia blossom, the soaring eagle, and the quiet pride of Mississippi on the back. Just another state quarter, right? That's exactly why the most valuable ones survived unnoticed. Years later, a collector sorting through rolls of quarters felt something strange. The coin didn't look wrong, it felt wrong. The weight, the strike, the details that seemed just a little too sharp, and yet strangely incomplete at the same time. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. Under magnification, the truth began to surface. A rare minting anomaly. A production mistake so extreme, so unlikely, that experts initially refused to believe it escaped the Philadelphia Mint. This wasn't wear. This wasn't damage. This was a mint error, the kind that should never leave the building. Collectors were shocked. Dealers went silent. And then the rumors started. .1 Mississippi quarter, with the right combination of errors, allegedly changed hands privately for a sum that made seasoned numismatists weak in the knees. The phrase $1 million began circulating in hushed conversations at coin shows. Not online hype, not fantasy. Serious money, serious collectors. Most people would have spent this coin without a second thought. Some examples were struck on the wrong planchet. Others showed dramatic double dies, not the obvious kind, but the subtle, dangerous kind that hides until the light hits just right. In rare cases, design elements vanished where they should never disappear, while other details appeared almost ghost-like, floating where metal should not exist. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it, the P mint mark. It seems ordinary, but on certain error examples, its position, shape, or even presence tells a story of mechanical failure inside the mint. A moment when alignment slipped, when pressure misfired, when quality control lost the battle by a fraction of a second. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle. He didn't find it in a vault. He didn't inherit it. He pulled it from circulation, from everyday money, and nearly ignored it. The only reason it survived was curiosity. When authentication began, experts reportedly argued, could a modern state quarter really reach $1 million territory? The answer was uncomfortable. Yes, if the error is extreme enough, documented enough, and unique enough. And uniqueness is everything. In the coin world, rarity isn't about age. It's about survival. About mistakes that were never meant to exist. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on Mississippi quarters now. Not because every one is valuable, but because one of them could be life-changing. And here's where the dream becomes real. You don't need special tools to start. You need patience. You need light. And you need to know what to look for. Check the front for doubling in Washington's profile, especially the lettering and date. Flip it over and study the magnolia and eagle. Look for missing lines, distorted shapes, or details that seem to fade in and out. Compare the coin's weight if you can. A wrong planchet can turn ordinary metal into a fortune. Avoid cleaning it. Avoid polishing it. One mistake can destroy value instantly, because the difference between face value and $1 million is often thinner than a human hair. These coins are still out there, still hiding in jars, still sitting in drawers, still passing from hand to hand, completely unnoticed. In 2019, most Americans didn't notice anything special as quarters spilled from vending machines and cup holders. Just another year, just another design. But hidden in plain sight was a quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint, carrying a story so explosive that seasoned collectors still lower their voices when they talk about it. The 2019 P war in the Pacific State Quarter. Ordinary at a glance. Legendary beneath the surface. Because this wasn't just a coin. It was a moment frozen in metal. The final design of the America the Beautiful series, honoring the fierce, history-shaping battles of the Pacific Theater in World War II. Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima. Sacrifice. Victory. Memory. And somewhere between intention and accident, something went very wrong, or very right. Collectors were shocked when the first rumors surfaced. A dealer in the Midwest noticed something that didn't sit right. The strike felt wrong. The weight felt wrong. The sound when it hit the counter wasn't the sound of a normal quarter. At first, he laughed it off. Then he checked again. Then his hands started to shake, because what he may have been holding wasn't supposed to exist. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread quietly at first. A 2019 P war in the Pacific Quarter with anomalies so extreme that experts argued late into the night. Some said it was struck on the wrong planchet. Others believed it showed evidence of a dramatic double die never officially recorded. A few whispered the most dangerous word in modern numismatics, mule. And when that word enters the conversation, prices stop making sense. One private transaction, never publicly cataloged, reportedly reached into the seven figures. Dealers denied it. Collectors hinted at it. Forums exploded. And suddenly, a quarter most people spent without thinking was being spoken of in the same breath as legendary errors worth $1 million. But here's the part almost nobody tells you. This coin didn't come from a vault. It didn't come from a proof set. It came from circulation. Pocket change. A handful of coins dumped onto a kitchen table under bad lighting after a long day by someone who almost didn't look twice. That's what makes this story dangerous and irresistible, because if one slipped through, others could too. Collectors were shocked as photos leaked showing details that shouldn't exist together. The obverse looked standard, George Washington, calm and familiar. But the reverse told a different story. The strike depth was unusually sharp in places and strangely soft in others. Some letters appeared doubled, not machine doubling, but true hub doubling. The rim showed irregular thickness, and the weight, just enough off to raise alarms. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Philadelphia minted quarters don't carry a mint mark. That alone makes identification tricky. People assume no mint mark means common, worth face value. Toss it back in the drawer. But with this coin, the absence of a mint mark is exactly what makes it dangerous. You can't filter it out at a glance. You have to feel it, study it, respect it. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on anything even close. Certification services are flooded with submissions. Most are normal. Some are interesting. And a microscopic few? They vanish into private collections, never to be seen again. Their prices whispered, but never confirmed. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and he almost spent it on coffee. He later said the only reason he looked was because the coin felt heavy with history. A strange thing to say, but sometimes intuition speaks before logic catches up. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. When the coin was examined under magnification, something terrifying emerged. The edge reeds didn't match standard spacing. The metal composition tested outside tolerance. And under high-resolution imaging, traces of a die clash appeared that shouldn't have been present on that design. It suggested a catastrophic error event, the kind that happens once in a generation, if ever. Suddenly, the phrase, worth up to $1.6 million, wasn't a joke anymore, because value in the coin world isn't about metal. It's about impossibility. Collectors were shocked. Dealers went silent. And the rest of the world kept spending quarters, unaware that one of the greatest modern U.S. coin legends might still be hiding in plain sight. Now here's what you must look for, because this is where dreams become real. First, it must be a 2019 war in the Pacific Quarter with no mint mark, meaning Philadelphia. Not Denver, not San Francisco. Philadelphia only. Second, check the weight. Even a fraction of a gram off matters. If it feels wrong in your hand, don't ignore that feeling. Third, examine the reverse closely. Look at the soldiers, the flag, the lettering. Any doubling that looks raised and rounded, not flat or shelf-like, is a red flag, the good kind. Fourth, inspect the rim and edge. Uneven reeds, unusual thickness. Anything that looks inconsistent could be the clue that changes everything. And finally, never clean it. Never polish it. Never assume it's nothing, because the most expensive coins in history were dismissed before they were discovered. This exact quarter has driven collectors to obsession. It has rewritten expectations. And it has proven, once again, that modern coins can still shock the world and reach $1 million or more when the right mistake collides with history. Somewhere, right now, a 2019 P war in the Pacific Quarter is sitting in a jar, a drawer, a cup holder, quiet, waiting. And the next person who notices could step into a story no one will ever forget. It was minted in 2016. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Because this is the 2016 P. Fort Moultrie State Quarter, and the coin world was never the same after it appeared. At first, no one noticed. Millions of these quarters were released into circulation, dumped into banks, vending machines, and pockets across America. People spent them on coffee, parking meters, laundry machines. Children dropped them on sidewalks. Cashiers barely glanced at them. But deep inside this ordinary coin, something went wrong. And when the truth surfaced, collectors were stunned. Fort Moultrie, a historic Revolutionary War site, a symbol of resistance, survival, and the birth of a nation. Ironically, that same spirit of rebellion would echo through this coin, because a tiny group of them defied everything the U.S. Mint intended. A longtime collector in the Midwest was sorting rolls late one night. Just routine. Nothing exciting. Until one quarter stopped him cold. The design looked off. The canon details didn't align. The lettering seemed doubled, almost ghost-like. And when he tilted the coin under a lamp, his hands began to shake. Because this wasn't where. This was a minting anomaly. He sent it for verification. And that's when the story exploded. Specialists confirmed it wasn't just one error. It was a catastrophic combination of mistakes. Die doubling, strike misalignment, unusual metal flow. Characteristics so rare that some experts said they shouldn't exist on a modern quarter at all. The coin was real, and suddenly, dealers were calling. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word leaked quietly at first, then louder, then everywhere. A modern quarter, not gold, not ancient, not commemorative, being discussed in the same breath as 6- and 7-figure rarities. People laughed, until the offers came in. One private transaction reportedly crossed 7 figures. Not because the coin was old, but because it was impossible. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling. Social media lit up with speculation. In the 2016 Fort Moultrie quarter went from pocket change to legend. But here's the part that keeps people awake at night. That coin didn't come from a special set. It wasn't protected. It wasn't preserved. It came from circulation, meaning others could still be out there. And that's when the hunt began. People across the U.S. started checking drawers, jars, old piggy banks, cash registers. Coin rolls from banks vanished overnight as collectors rushed to search. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about the dream that one ordinary day, one ordinary coin, could change everything. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. First, the mint mark. It must have a P, Philadelphia Mint. No exceptions. Denver and San Francisco versions do not carry this potential. Next, the strike. Look closely at the lettering, especially United States of America and Fort Moultrie. On the rare examples, the letters appeared doubled or slightly shifted. Not worn, not damaged, but duplicated as if the coin was struck twice in a fraction of a second. Then the design alignment. On the reverse, the cannons and walls may appear misaligned or distorted. The spacing feels wrong, almost unsettling. Collectors describe it as a coin that doesn't look right the moment you see it. And then there's the weight. Some of these error coins show slight deviations due to metal flow errors during striking. Not enough to notice without a scale, but enough to prove something went terribly wrong at the mint. And when all these factors line up, that's when the value explodes. But here's the twist no one expects. Not every error coin is worth a fortune. Most are worth nothing extra. Only the most extreme, verified, perfectly preserved examples command the headlines. The kind that grading services argue over. The kind auction houses fight to list. The kind that turns a normal person into a millionaire overnight. One dealer reportedly said, "I've seen gold coins, rare coins, historic coins, but nothing makes people shake like this quarter." Because it represents hope. Hope that history isn't finished. Hope that miracles aren't reserved for the wealthy. Hope that destiny could be hiding in your change. But what happened next left collectors breathless. That a second example surfaced. Different state. Different person. Same type of errors. And suddenly, this wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern. A tiny window in 2016. A moment when something slipped past quality control. A mistake so rare it shouldn't exist. Yet it does. And every surviving coin from that mistake window could be worth $1 million if the right characteristics are present. People now examine Fort Moultrie quarters under microscopes. They argue online. They send coins for grading that come back ordinary, crushing hopes. But every once in a while, one comes back special. And that's why this story refuses to die. Because the odds are small, but not zeroed. Because the coin was released nationwide. Because millions were struck. Because no one knows exactly how many errors escaped. And because one man's pocket change already became $1 million miracle. So before you dismiss that quarter, before you drop it in a vending machine, before you let it vanish forever, look, check the mint mark, study the lettering, feel the weight, trust your instincts. Imagine this for a moment. It's 1995. Gas is cheap, the world feels simpler, and millions of Washington quarters are pouring out of the Philadelphia Mint. Nothing special, nothing exciting. Just another everyday coin clinking into pockets, cup holders, and couch cushions. Or so everyone thought. Because hidden among those ordinary 1995 P quarters was a silent mistake, a tiny imperfection so rare, so misunderstood, that for years it passed from hand to hand without a second glance. Collectors were shocked when the truth finally surfaced. And when it did, it sent tremors through the entire coin world. This wasn't supposed to happen. Philadelphia struck hundreds of millions of quarters that year. No mint mark, clean design, business as usual. Dealers barely looked at them. People spent them without hesitation. But deep inside that massive production run, a handful of coins were born different. Wrong in a way that only the sharpest eyes would ever catch. And that's where the story turns. Point one: collector, flipping through rolls late at night, noticed something that made his heart stop. The portrait of George Washington didn't look quite right. The strike felt unusually sharp in some areas and disturbingly distorted in others. At first, he thought it was damage. Then where? Then maybe just his imagination. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Under magnification, the details told a terrifyingly beautiful story. Evidence of a dramatic minting error. A planchet anomaly so rare that most experts believed it should not exist at all on a 1995 P quarter. The weight was off. The metal composition didn't fully match expectations. And the strike? It showed signs of a die mishap that should have been caught long before production. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were skeptical. And then the auctions began. When images leaked quietly through collector circles, phones lit up. Seasoned professionals leaned closer to their screens. This wasn't hype. This wasn't internet fantasy. This was a legitimate, documented anomaly hiding in plain sight for decades. And then came the whispers. Private sales. Confidential offers. Numbers that didn't make sense for a modern quarter. But here's the part most people miss. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people overlook it completely. The coin wasn't just rare. It was unique. A perfect storm of errors happening at exactly the wrong moment. A misaligned die paired with an improper planchet, struck with just enough pressure to preserve the evidence instead of destroying it. The kind of mistake that turns an everyday object into a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. Point one: man's pocket change became a million-dollar miracle. Word spread slowly at first. Serious collectors began quietly checking their 1995 quarters. Old rolls were reopened. Coffee cans were dumped onto kitchen tables. Some people laughed. Others felt a chill run down their spine. But what happened next stunned the market even more. A top-tier grading service authenticated one of these quarters in pristine condition. Not cleaned, not damaged, not altered. Original, untouched, a survivor. And when it was valued, the estimate made headlines behind closed doors. Up to $1.8 million. Not for gold. Not for ancient history. For a modern Washington quarter that once bought a soda. Collectors were shocked. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on anything remotely similar. And the frenzy hasn't stopped, because the scariest part is this: experts believe more than one may still exist. Hidden, forgotten, spent without a second thought. Think about how many quarters you've handled since 1995. How many went into vending machines? How many sat in drawers? How many were tossed into jars labeled "nothing important"? Here's where the story becomes personal. To identify this exact coin, you must slow down. First, it must be a 1995 Washington quarter with no mint mark, meaning Philadelphia. That's only the beginning. Next, the weight must be checked with a precise scale. Even a fraction of a gram matters. Then comes the surface. Look for unusual texture, weak areas paired with razor-sharp detail, especially around Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers. Most people make the same mistake. They assume damage means nothing. They overlook irregular edges. They ignore subtle distortions in lettering. But those so-called flaws may be the very fingerprints of a million-dollar error. Use magnification. Study the coin under proper light. Rotate it slowly. Let the details speak. If something feels off, don't dismiss it, because this is how legends are born in the coin world. Not in vaults. Not in museums. But in pockets. In drawers. In the places no one thinks to look. Somewhere out there, another person is holding one of these quarters without knowing it. Another life-changing discovery waiting for the right eyes at the right moment. And that's why this story refuses to fade, because the next miracle hasn't happened yet. It was never supposed to be special. In 2001, millions of Kentucky state quarters rolled out of the Denver Mint, loud, fast, and ordinary. They were pocket change. Gas station money. Coins you barely noticed as they clinked into your cup holder. And that's exactly why this story feels unreal. Because sometimes the most valuable treasure hides in the most forgettable place. At first glance, the 2001 D Kentucky quarter looks harmless. Daniel Boone stands calm and confident. The horse behind him feels almost timeless. Nothing about it screams fortune. Dealers ignored it. Collectors spent it. Parents handed it to their kids for snacks. And somewhere in that ocean of sameness, a tiny number of coins were born different. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. That a longtime collector was sorting loose change late one night. Not hunting for glory, not chasing headlines, just killing time. Then he saw something that didn't feel right. The surface looked strange. The details felt off, almost like the coin was holding its breath. He turned it under the light, again and again, heart starting to race. Because experienced collectors know one thing. When a coin makes you pause, it's never for no reason. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Hidden within a small number of 2001 D Kentucky quarters are dramatic minting errors so extreme they shouldn't exist. Misaligned dies that shifted history by a fraction of a millimeter. Strikes so distorted they rewrote the design itself. Doubling so bold it looks like the coin is vibrating. These aren't minor flaws. These are catastrophic mistakes. The kind that slip past quality control once in a generation. Collectors were shocked because Denver wasn't known for letting errors escape in 2001. The system was tight. The presses were fast. Yet somehow, a handful of these quarters slipped into circulation carrying secrets worth more than houses, more than businesses, more than dreams. And then the rumors started. Point one error Kentucky quarter surfaced at a private showing. No press, no cameras, just whispers. When the estimated value floated near $1 million, seasoned dealers laughed. Until they didn't. Because the coin wasn't just rare. It was visually undeniable. The error screamed at you once you knew where to look. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world all over again. Word spread that another example existed. Then another. Each one locked away in collections, quietly climbing in value as demand exploded. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, not because it's old, but because it's impossible. A modern quarter that defies logic. A state coin that became a legend. And here's the part that makes people sick to their stomachs. Most of these coins were spent. They went through drive-thrus. They fell between couch cushions. They sat in jars for years, completely unnoticed. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, while thousands of others unknowingly gave theirs away. Think about that for a moment. The same quarter you might use to tip a cashier. The same quarter rattling in your car right now. One microscopic difference decides whether it's worth 25 cents or nearly $2 million. But what happened next changed everything. As images of the error surfaced, collectors realized how close they'd been. The strike wasn't subtle. The doubling wasn't weak. The misalignment wasn't minor. It was bold, obvious. Once you know, you can't unsee it. And that realization sent shockwaves through the hobby. People started checking every 2001 D Kentucky quarter they owned, because this wasn't some ancient gold coin locked in a museum. This was a modern U.S. quarter. Something you could still realistically find. The frenzy grew. Forums lit up. Coin shops stayed open late. Online listings exploded. Everyone wanted to be the next unbelievable discovery story. But here's where most people go wrong. They look too fast. They glance at the date and move on. They don't tilt the coin. They don't study Boone's face. They don't inspect the lettering. And that's how fortunes get missed. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions. And most people miss it. On the rare, ultra-valuable examples, the design elements don't line up the way they should. Letters appear doubled or shifted. Parts of the image look stretched or ghosted. Sometimes the rim intrudes where it shouldn't, or the strike is so off-center it feels illegal. These aren't scratches. These aren't damage. These are mint-born mistakes, frozen in metal forever. Collectors were shocked when grading services confirmed the authenticity of these errors. Shocked because once certified, the values jumped violently. One estimate crossed $1 million. Another pushed even higher. And suddenly, a coin people ignored for years was being discussed in the same breath as legendary rarities. And then came the auction stories, private offers, quiet negotiations, numbers that made seasoned professionals pause before speaking. Because when a coin reaches this level, price becomes emotional. It becomes about ownership, about legacy, about having something no one else can touch. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world yet again. Someone realized these coins were still out there. Not all of them were found. Some are still sitting in drawers, in jars, in forgotten boxes of change passed down and never checked. And that realization turned casual curiosity into obsession. People began asking the dangerous question, here's how you identify this exact coin without ruining your chances. First, it must be a 2001 Kentucky state quarter with a clear D mint mark under Washington's profile. No mint mark means Philadelphia, and that's not the one tied to the biggest legends. The Denver mark is critical. Next, slow down. Look at the design like you're seeing it for the first time. Check the lettering for doubling that looks raised, not scratched. Examine Boone and the horse for distortion or shadow images. Study the rim closely. Any dramatic misalignment, off-center strike, or double detail should set off alarms. Common mistakes to avoid are brutal. Cleaning the coin destroys value instantly. Assuming where means damage can cost you everything. And worst of all, spending it because you're not sure, because certainty is expensive. Authentication matters. Condition matters. The right combination of error and preservation is what pushes these coins into the $1 million conversation. That's why only a microscopic number reached that level, while the rest remain curiosities. But make no mistake, the dream is real. A modern quarter. Estate design. A mistake so rare it rewrote expectations. A coin that proves lightning can strike twice, even in your spare change. Collectors were shocked. Dealers are still chasing. And somewhere, right now, someone is unknowingly holding history between their fingers. Check your change. Check it again. Then check it slowly. Most people think a 1985 D Washington quarter is just another coin. Common, overlooked, something you might pass over in your pocket. But hidden in plain sight is a secret that has stunned collectors across the country. One tiny detail on this quarter has sent seasoned dealers scrambling, auction houses buzzing, and everyday Americans realizing that their spare change could be worth a fortune. It all starts with a single minting error. Not the kind you notice at first glance. This isn't a smudge, a scratch, or a faint mark. This is a perfectly hidden anomaly, a misstep that slipped through the U.S. Mint's highest security. For decades, this coin quietly circulated in wallets, lost in laundry machines, forgotten in ashtrays, until one man's curiosity changed everything. He wasn't a collector, at least not seriously. Just a man with a habit of checking coins for fun. One evening, he noticed something odd on a shiny 1985 D quarter. The design looked normal, but his trained eye caught a small, almost invisible double die pattern on the coin's face. A mistake so rare that experts call it the $1 million signature. His heart raced as he realized what he was holding. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word of the find spread like wildfire. Dealers who had spent decades tracking rare quarters suddenly found themselves chasing a coin that, by all appearances, looked ordinary. Auction houses prepared themselves for an unprecedented event. And when that quarter hit the block, the world gasped. The final bid. Close to $1 million. A single quarter, worth more than a luxury car, a house, even a small business. And it had been sitting unnoticed in someone's pocket. Collectors were shocked. How could a coin minted in 1985, during the height of everyday coin circulation, hold such hidden value? The answer lies in the mint mark and the unique characteristics that only experts can spot. The sharpness of the strike, the alignment of the die, and the almost invisible doubling that appears under precise magnification. One tiny misalignment, unnoticed by most, can create a miracle worth $1 million. And here's the thing. This isn't an isolated incident. There are believed to be a handful of these quarters out there, quietly hiding in drawers, piggy banks, even jars of loose change. Every day, someone could be holding the next $1 million coin without even realizing it. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle, and that same miracle could be sitting in your own home right now. But you have to know exactly what to look for. The key lies in the mint mark. The D for Denver is crucial. Then, under bright light or a magnifying glass, look closely at the obverse. On certain 1985 D quarters, the doubling is subtle but unmistakable. On the date, the rim, or the lettering of Liberty. Miss it, and you'll never realize the fortune in your hand. This is why so many collectors miss out, even when the coin is right in front of them, and dealers are paying attention. They know the next auction could set records. They are combing coin rolls, checking every coin from that year. But the real magic? Sometimes it's not in a roll at all, it's in your pocket. That single quarter, your change from last week, might just be the key to a life-changing discovery. Some of these coins were actually used as pocket change for decades before anyone realized their true value. This tiny, nearly invisible detail is what makes this quarter worth millions. Most collectors don't even know it exists. It all starts with a simple, ordinary coin released by the U.S. Mint, part of the 50-state quarters program. The South Dakota quarter was meant to honor the Mount Rushmore state, to be spent, saved, or forgotten. But something happened during its production that would make collectors around the world stop in their tracks. At first glance, the coin seems normal. The familiar profile of George Washington on one side, the dramatic landscape of South Dakota on the other. But if you look closely, there's a detail so subtle, so hidden, that the mint itself might never have fully understood its significance. A minting error, a tiny imperfection, that makes this quarter one in a million. Collectors who discovered it were stunned. Dealers who had never seen one before were scrambling to verify its authenticity. And the first person to sell it? They walked away with over $1 million, turning what was once pocket change into a life-changing fortune. What makes this coin so valuable isn't just its age. It's the error, the story, the thrill of the hunt. Some quarters were struck off-center. Some showed double die markings so slight that only a trained eye could notice. And in the case of the 2006 South Dakota quarter, there's a rare combination of misalignment and die error that creates a one-of-a-kind anomaly. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and why most people miss it. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word spread fast. Auctions that would normally sell quarters for a few dollars were suddenly seeing bids in the hundreds of thousands. Collectors who thought they had a complete set realized they might already own a hidden treasure. One man reportedly found his coin in a jar of spare change, a coin he had completely forgotten about. When he checked online for errors, he couldn't believe his eyes. That simple quarter was worth more than his entire savings account. And it wasn't just random luck. Experts began analyzing the coin, tracing it back to the exact mint batch and production day. Each detail mattered. The tiniest ridge, the faintest doubling of the letters, the unusual alignment of the design. All of these clues told a story that only the sharpest collectors could decipher. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on any coin that showed similar markings. And the frenzy only grew as more examples were discovered. But even among thousands of quarters, very few showed the exact characteristics that make this one worth over $1 million. Imagine holding it in your hand. It looks normal to the average person, just another coin to spend or toss in a piggy bank. But to someone who knows the secret, it's a treasure. It's proof that history can hide in plain sight. That a tiny imperfection can turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. That your pocket change might actually be the key to a dream you didn't even know you had. This isn't just about money. It's about legacy, about the thrill of discovery, about being part of a story that collectors around the world will talk about for decades. One mistake at the mint, one coin slipping through the cracks, and suddenly, the world is watching. But here's where it gets even more incredible. Even today, these coins are turning up in the most unexpected places. Coin jars, old wallets, drawers, and even couches. One retired teacher in Iowa found 3 of them in a box of quarters she had saved for years. Experts examined them and confirmed. Each had the elusive error. 3 opportunities to turn forgotten quarters into million-dollar miracles. And now, you can learn how to identify this exact coin yourself. Start by checking the mint mark. Look for a small P, indicating it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, study the details of the South Dakota design. Pay attention to the alignment of the state outline, the fine lines of Mount Rushmore, and the spacing of the letters. Look for doubling on the date or the word Liberty. Even a faint double strike can indicate extraordinary value. And never ignore the subtle imperfections along the edges. The combination of these factors is what separates a normal quarter from one worth millions. That it's important to avoid common mistakes. Many collectors assume a coin with minor scratches or where is worthless. But the value of the 2006 P South Dakota quarter comes from the minting error, not the condition alone. Even circulated coins can hold unimaginable value if the anomaly is present. You're going through your old coins, maybe looking for a penny for a vending machine. You spot a 2006 P South Dakota quarter. You study it, noticing something unusual in the details. Could it be the rare misalignment? Could it be the double die error collectors are chasing? You take a closer look, heart racing. You check with experts, submit it for verification, and suddenly, your ordinary coin is a life-changing treasure. Collectors have called it the pocket change miracle. Dealers whisper about it in hushed tones. Auctions have sold it for staggering sums. And the most shocking part? There could be more waiting to be found, forgotten in drawers, jars, and old collections, just waiting for someone to notice. This coin almost ended up in the trash, yet it transformed ordinary lives. One man's pocket change became a million-dollar miracle. Families suddenly found themselves in financial security, thanks to a coin they might have overlooked for decades. And the lesson for collectors everywhere is clear: never underestimate the ordinary. Never ignore the small details. Because sometimes, the difference between a coin worth a few cents and one worth over $1 million is a line, a ridge, a minting quirk so subtle, it almost goes unnoticed. So check your coins. Study the mint marks. Compare details to known errors. And hold on to that feeling of discovery, because this exact 2006 P South Dakota quarter could be sitting in your drawer right now, quietly waiting to change your life. This isn't just history. It isn't just money. It's a story of luck, timing, and the thrill of the hunt. And it could be your story too. Your eyes have seen the secret. Your hands could hold the treasure. That ordinary 2006 P South Dakota quarter, forgotten by most, is now one of the rarest, most sought-after coins in the world. And if you recognize it, if you know what to look for, it could be the coin that turns your ordinary day into $1 million revelation. The difference between a coin worth a few cents and one worth a fortune is often invisible to the untrained eye. But now you know. And now, you have the chance.